a who's on first routine among House Republicans, except it isn't funny because of the giant issues the country faces as Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats yield to the new and narrow GOP majority. Today, Kevin McCarthy's title remains House Republican leader. By this time tomorrow, his hope is to be the Speaker of the House, to wield the gavel, to be second in line to the presidency. But despite years of planning and campaigning for this very moment, McCarthy is still short votes. And even some of his allies see McCarthy's math problem as getting worse, despite weeks and weeks of concessions to his Republican critics. Sunday, that's yesterday, McCarthy made even more concessions that would weaken the Speaker's powers. And he signed the letter detailing those concessions this way: Kevin McCarthy, Speaker designate. The immediate response, though, was dissension, even mockery. 9 Republicans, a mix of current and incoming members, saying McCarthy's promises still are not enough. And there are more than 9 GOP holdouts at this hour. If every eligible vote is cast, McCarthy can only afford to lose 4. So you get the math at home. The stakes go beyond the obvious disarray among the House Republicans. Congress remains paralyzed until someone takes the gavel. The drama points toward unprecedented dysfunction tomorrow, a potential first ballot failure for the first time in a century, and crippling embarrassment for the new Republican majority. Listen, this morning, this is Bob Good, a leader of the Never Kevin faction, pledging to push Republicans to the brink.
He's part of the swamp cartel. And I think you'll see on the second ballot an increasing number of members vote for a true candidate who can represent the conservative center of the conference.
Let's get straight up to Capitol Hill. CNN's Lauren Fox is there. Lauren, wow. The math problem for Kevin McCarthy, better, worse, same?
It's really in the exact same place. In fact, I just got off the phone with one Republican, Ralph Norman, who told me he is still a no on Kevin McCarthy. He was one of those 5 never Kevin votes, who is saying this morning that he still has not seen enough from McCarthy to turn around and vote for him tomorrow on the floor. That leaves McCarthy short the votes, and it leaves McCarthy's allies readying for a floor fight that is really coming around once in a century. That is the last time we saw multiple ballots on the floor of the House of Representatives in a speaker's race. Like you said, there are many things that Kevin McCarthy has tried to do over the last several weeks to try and win over some of those conservative holdouts. So far, nothing he has done has changed the arithmetic for him tomorrow. One of the things he tried to give them yesterday was lowering the threshold of the number of Republicans it would take to go to the floor and request a vote to oust the speaker. That number right now, just a majority of the conference, but he's saying he would be willing to take it as low as 5, John. That still wasn't enough, including for one Republican, Matt Gaetz, who was on the call, who said he was still a no. John?
Lauren Fox kicking us off from Capitol Hill. A dramatic 24 hours plus ahead. Lauren, thank you. With me in studio to share their reporting and their insights, CNN's Melanie Zanona, Margaret Talev of Axios, Jackie Kucinich of the Boston Globe, and CNN's Eva McKen. So Kevin McCarthy agrees to lower the threshold to remove the speaker to 5 members. 5 members can demand a vote to remove the speaker. He has said no virtual or hybrid hearings. He has said no more magnetometers outside the House chamber, no more fines for mask or security protocol violations. A bill would be posted for 72 hours. Everyone gets time to read it. Does he have anything left to give? And if you do the 9 who signed the letter, plus the other 5 who are already on record, that's at least 14.
Yeah,
he can only afford to lose 4 if everybody votes.
Yeah, the math problem is only getting worse for him. It's not getting better. Despite all of these concessions, despite essentially giving away the store, he has still not moved any votes. And in fact, new members signed on to that letter that you're referencing, the 9 of them saying they're not sold yet. So this is a big problem for McCarthy. He doesn't have a lot left in his back pocket. There's one thing he could potentially do, which is lower that motion to vacate threshold from 5 down to 1, which is what the conservatives have been seeking initially. He said he didn't want to do that. He said he didn't want to budge at all. So that would be a massive concession. Even 5 is already a massive concession for him. And even then, there's no guarantee that would get him the votes. In fact, lawmakers on a conference call yesterday were pressing him, will this get you the votes if you cave on this? And there was no answer. McCarthy couldn't give an answer. McCarthy asked Matt Gaetz, if I went down to 1, would you vote for me? And he, again, wouldn't give an answer. So a lot of uncertainty heading into tomorrow.
At some point, if he does gain the speakership, though, it's like he's really speaker in name only. He's essentially powerless. And, you know, not that the devil needs any advocates here, but I would say, you know, for someone who is an institution of Washington, it makes sense for him to face some sort of challenge, right? It shouldn't be a coronation. But I think the problem for him and for the conference is look at who is challenging him, right? It could be a completely debacle.
Scott Perry, one of the Freedom Caucus members and one of those who's skeptical, nothing changes when nothing changes. And that must start from the top. Time to make the change or get out of the way. What does that mean, though? That's my question, is for the insurgents against Kevin McCarthy. You know, look, he's had to concede the store. He looks weak. He's still stronger than any other candidate in the race, though. He still has more votes than anybody else right now. What do they want? Is there anything that they want, or they just want to humiliate Kevin McCarthy?
That. Bingo. It's that. Some of the frustration, I think, from this group with McCarthy is that they see him as too much of a conciliator. And I think at one point in Kevin McCarthy's career many years ago, that would probably be a fair characterization. He's a Republican from Bakersfield, California. It's really hard to be a Republican in the state of California. He came out of the legislative system. He comes from a place of compromise. That actually makes sense for a House Speaker to be in that role. But he hasn't been that Kevin McCarthy in many, many years, because as the Republican Party has changed, he has had to change with it. I think we're at this is going to be a real exercise in American democracy here. We're going to see something play out, unless something changes dramatically in the next few hours, that hasn't really played out since 1923. And that has sort of epically played out during the Civil War era. There's really only a couple moments in the history of the United States when a fight like this has gone public, when a small group like this has forced multiple votes, and this group that is holding together cannot get their own guy. For them, Kevin McCarthy is as good as it gets. Who could it be if it wasn't Kevin McCarthy? It could maybe be Steve Scalise, who's also 57 years old, who also comes from a similar experience as Kevin McCarthy does politically, and who has the moral high ground of having been a victim of a political shooting, domestic terrorist shooting, directed against Republicans. So he has a claim to argue for bipartisanship and for compromise, an even stronger claim than Kevin McCarthy does. I have thought up until this moment that McCarthy would get it because nothing else makes sense. But at this moment, this might not happen anymore.
The
Scalise
insurgents
is standing behind McCarthy. We should say
Yeah,
that.
Scalise is standing behind McCarthy, although he knows full well he doesn't need to say anything. That he is one of the 2 or 3 people who might emerge, and he would be the most likely because of his position and because of his credibility on both sides, both to his right and to his left, if there is a left in the House Republican Conference. Brendan Buck, who worked for Paul Ryan and for John Boehner up on Capitol Hill, wrote this in the New York Times. A self-serving power play by a small group of Republicans threatens to make a mockery of the institution and further cement the notion that the party is not prepared to lead. The agitators' objective isn't to win the speakership for one of their own. It is to weaken Mr. McCarthy or whoever emerges as the next Speaker of the House. The embarrassment, indeed, may be the point. That is the question. Do these, whether there's 15, whether there's 20, whether it's a number roughly somewhere in that ballpark, do they have any interest in governing? Or are they looking here to just be the house of protest?
Well, the place that they're in, that the House Republicans are in, when you look at larger Washington, it is sort of when you are in you're the only ones who have one lever of government. They do kind of play that oversight, throwing a wrench in that is modern politics in the way that the Democrats are doing business, because they don't want to legislate, because they don't want policies that they don't agree with becoming law. That said, I think one of the things that you're hearing from Republicans like Brendan Buck, like those who might be on the outside but understand how the inside works, they're saying, you guys are letting, the Democrats are the ones who are winning right now.
That Joe Biden will win.
Because you are the ones who are causing so much embarrassment and not allowing anyone to be a standard bearer.
And it is just remarkable, taking a step back. Tomorrow should be a day of victory. House Republicans are claiming the House majority, and instead it's being completely overshadowed by this drama.
Which gets you to the point is like, who are they and what do they want? In the sense that you mentioned somebody like Brendan Buck, years of experience on Capitol Hill, a reasonable, you'd call him an establishment, sort of a Chamber of Commerce type Republican. When the insurgents see people like him, they say, I will do the opposite.
Yes.
Because he's the enemy to them. Listen to Bob Good. You heard a little bit of it at the top of the program. Very conservative from Virginia. He says, we will have another candidate. Just wait.
Who is that name? Here we are in the 11th hour. There are no names. Give me a name. It's not Andy Biggs. Andy Biggs isn't going to win.
Well, I'm going to resist for a few more hours what I have resisted for the last several weeks, because, as you know, if we were to put forth a name right now over the last few weeks, that person would suffer all the attacks and retaliation and all the
Just
threats.
so you don't have a name. I mean, what leader?
Absolutely. Griff, you'll see that name tomorrow on the second ballot.
Who is he? Could you envision Steve Scalise elevating from majority leader?
You'll find out tomorrow on the second ballot, Griff.
So there's a promise that we will see it tomorrow on the second ballot. I get and understand. Don't put the name out today, because then the harpoons start flying. But do they actually have somebody? Is there somebody? Has Scalise been whispering? Is there some candidate whose name we don't know, who, somebody who says, first, I'm for Kevin. Yeah. But if he fails, then you may turn to me.
So as we reported at CNN, they have asked, this group of hardliners have asked Steve Scalise, including Jim Jordan, if they'd be willing to run. Both of them said no, as long as Kevin is in the race. And as far as I know, Steve Scalise really hasn't been making moves behind the scenes. He knows he can't. But I think the general wisdom is that if McCarthy pulls out, or if senior Republicans walk up to him on the floor after multiple ballots and say, listen, we gave it a try, it's not working, you need to step aside. I do think Steve Scalise steps up and he's the automatic frontrunner. But in a chaotic situation like this, anything goes. Other people could jump in. You just really don't know.
Well, and then you have the issue, should McCarthy step aside? You have you have the rules package potentially being renegotiated, because there are Republicans who are the more moderate Republicans saying they're not going to support rules that Kevin McCarthy has negotiated if it is not him. So this will just throw everything into turmoil, even if he does step aside. It's going to be quite the show this week.